Hey, do you feel like you could use a win? You could use a victory? Well, that's what First Peter chapter 3 is all about. The close of the chapter really points to a group of people who could use a win and need a little reminder. I'm Pastor Matt. Thanks for reading along with First Peter as we walk through sections one at a time and week by week cover a different chapter. I encourage you to read along with us. We're reading the whole book every week as a way to really get a feel for how the pieces fit together. So the close of chapter 3, there's some confusing stuff here, and there's some things that, quite frankly, I don't have answers to because I don't think God's given us some of the answers. We have questions about this section that we're just going to have to wait to find out what they're all about, or maybe we'll wait and we'll realize at some point when sin is removed and we're with Jesus that it really doesn't matter. So I won't care anymore. But there's some confusing things because he talks about Jesus visiting these demons in prison and at the time of Noah and all these kind of references. Well, here's the context I want you to think about. It's about a victory. It's about a win. And it's speaking to a group of people, these early Christians that Peter's writing to, who there's a lot of talk about suffering. And there's a lot of suffering that's anticipated. And things are going to get difficult. And things are already difficult. And guess what? When it gets hard, what's your job? Humbly do good, even for the people who make it hard sometimes. That's been the message to this point. So Peter's realizing that, okay, you need some reminders that there is a victory, okay? And so he points to this Noah narrative, and he points out the fact that Jesus, he says he's put to death in the flesh, but alive in the spirit, in which he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison. So he proclaims his spirits in prison because they formerly did not obey when God's patience waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared. And it just sort of comes out of the blue. And you're like, what? Why are we talking about Noah? And what's Jesus doing proclaiming to spirits? Well, here's the deal. Jesus, from what we understand, Jesus goes and proclaims a victory. Okay? And at the time that Peter's writing, one of the common things for the Roman military after a military victory, they took all the prisoners, all the soldiers and future slaves, I guess, that they'd captured, and they would march them through the city, and it was a victory parade. That's the type of thing that's going on here. It's Jesus' victory parade, proclaiming, "Look, I'm still in control. You may think you're winning, but God is in control, and He's taking care of things." And just like He took care of things at the time of the flood, because if you think about it now, when the rest of the world is corrupt, and you've got Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives, these 8 people that God chooses to save because that's in a sense all that's left on God's team, it really looks like the enemy has won. But the enemy didn't win. And Jesus proclaimed that victory at the time of the flood. Jesus proclaimed that victory again on the cross. And we need to hear this, and Peter's audience needs to hear this and be reminded that, look, it's looked dire before, and your God proclaimed victory, and He won that victory for His people. And if it looks dire now in your life, just remember that there's a victory proclaimed over you. And I love the fact that He gets really personal with it, because He doesn't leave it as a generalized, hey, Jesus on the cross died for everyone. That's true, and that's the power behind this. But He points specifically to baptism, and He says, your baptism, God's work in your baptism is your guarantee. And that's a proclamation over you and a proclamation in front of every enemy that might stand in your way that you are God's child and that He has won this victory. That the work of Jesus on the cross, it is for everyone, and it's applied to you specifically because of that baptism. And you need that victory. You need a God who stands over you and says, this is my child. And this is my child who stands with me in victory, in the victory of the resurrection, in the victory of what Jesus has done for us. So if you need a win today, if you need a victory to look to your baptism. And remember that that's the gift that ties you to Jesus' gift on the cross and in the empty tomb and in the new life that you live in Him. Thanks for listening. I'm Pastor Matt. I look forward to digging into 1 Peter chapter 4 next week.